Welcome to Cinematic Excrement. As I'm sure many of you are aware, there's a crackpot theory going around that says the world is going to end later this year, specifically on December 21st. The theory is based on a heavily flawed interpretation of the Mayan calendar, and is generally not taken seriously by anyone with at least two brain cells to rub together. But why should that stop Hollywood from capitalizing on the fear? And capitalize they did about 3 years ago, with a little help from Roland Emmerich and a movie titled, appropriately, 2012.
Receiving mixed reviews, but nevertheless bringing in huge profits, like pretty much any other Roland Emmerich disaster movie, 2012 tells the story of science fiction writer Jackson Curtis, played by John Cusack, who discovers the world's leaders have begun a secret project to ensure at least a small fraction of humanity will survive the coming apocalypse. As the world literally starts crumbling around him, he races against the clock to save his family from This Is Not the Right Movie.
What the hell is going on here? What is this? Wait a minute. 2012 Doomsday? I don't remember Doomsday being in the title. Oh no, is this from The Asylum? Oh shit. It's not just from The Asylum, it's from Faith Films, the Christian branch of The Asylum. And take a look at the uncited quote, a modern Christian epic in the tradition of the Omega Code and Left Behind. Those are Rapture movies. Ladies and gentlemen, I hold in my hands a Christian Rapture mockbuster of 2012 from The Asylum. Stop it. Well, this isn't exactly what I had planned, but sometimes you just gotta play the hand you're dealt. 2012 Doomsday. Here we go.
As I said, 2012 Doomsday is a film about the biblical rapture. If you're not familiar with the concept, you can look up a more detailed description on your own, but here's the short version. It's an event that precedes the second coming of Christ in which true believers will be snatched up by God and taken straight to heaven. Everyone left behind will experience a multitude of disasters, hardships, and other generally nasty things, which will wipe out most of the life on Earth before the Jeebus makes his return. It's an interesting story that has spawned several terrible movies, and we'll be looking at one of them today.
Before we get started, let me make one thing perfectly clear. I am not here to offend anyone's beliefs, nor am I here to start a debate on the merits of Christianity or any other religion. I am here to take the piss out of a terrible movie, a concept that every person of every faith can embrace. And if for some reason you can't, do what the disclaimer at the start of the video says, and leave the internet. Now.
As you can see from this opening shot, the movie takes place on Earth in the year 2012. Because we never could have figured that out on our own, as the opening credits roll, we get this shot of a South American river, presumably because the director somehow conned the asylum into buying him a helicopter ride and filmed this to justify the expense. You may also notice this movie was filmed in anamorphic widescreen instead of the 16:9 HDTV standard the asylum typically uses.
Aww, they think they're making a real movie. That's adorable.
We then transition to a part of Belize we're pretending is Orizaba, Mexico, and oh god, really? CGI tents? I know asylum movies work on a limited budget, but are tents really that expensive? Anyway, the CGI tents belong to a group of not CGI archaeologists, led by Dr. Frank Richards and Dr. Ian Hunter, played respectively by Dale Midkiff and Lewis Graham. They're in the middle of a dig, despite the fact that the nearby Pico de Orizaba is about to erupt within hours. An intelligent person would get the hell out of there, but these are clearly not intelligent people.
And that's why they're doctors. Wait.
At this time, another archaeologist, Dr. Trish Lane, played by Caroline Amiget, arrives at the dig site because... plot. Frank does not look pleased to see her.
How do you know Dr. Lane? We have a history.
Spoiler alert, they're married, although separated. Who the hell describes their marriage as, we have a history? Yeah, technically it's true, but it's still stupid.
One of the workers tells Frank they just opened up a new chamber in whatever the hell they're digging up, so he and Trish head in to investigate.
How can it be possible?
I don't know.
A crucifix in a country that's 80% Roman Catholic? How can it be possible? Okay, I'm not being fair. They did find the crucifix in some Mayan ruins, which would be a little weird. Then the volcano erupts, and they finally decide now might be a good time to leave. Better late than never, I guess. We then transition to the U.S. Geological Survey Center, where a man simply known as Lloyd, played by Cliff DeYoung, is briefing a group of scientists on a recent worldwide increase in seismic activity, along with unusual weather reports. Lloyd's explanation for these strange phenomena is comical to say the least. He claims the Earth's rotation is slowing due to the solar system's alignment with the black hole at the center of the galaxy. A theory so batshit insane, even the movie doesn't buy it.
Sir, NASA's known about these alignments for decades. We've run the calculations, and there's no way that the gravitational force can significantly impact this planet.
I don't know what's causing it, but I tell you, by all our calculations, this theory is the only one that makes any sense.
So, according to your calculations, the only possible explanation for what's happening is impossible according to your calculations.
Meanwhile, back in Mexico, a young lady named Sarah is running through Veracruz while attempting to look frantic. While she does, this guy takes pictures of her. That's a bit creepy, especially for a supposed religious movie. By the way, it looks like I may have spoken too soon when I said this movie was filmed in anamorphic widescreen. As you can see in this point of view shot from Creepy's camera, the on-screen display is partially cut off. So they probably did film in 16:9 and just letterboxed it. Why would you do that? I understand using anamorphic if you plan on showing your film on a screen that naturally supports that aspect ratio, but those screens are primarily found in movie theaters, and this was released direct to DVD.
Does adding black bars on the top and bottom of your screen magically make your production classier? You know what? Let's try it. Nope, doesn't work.
Creepy eventually walks up to Sarah and asks if she's okay, introducing himself as a photojournalist. Yeah, right. He also says his name is Alex, but I'm going to keep calling him Creepy because it amuses me. Sarah says she's a missionary in a nearby small town, and all of its people have suddenly become ill, but the town has no doctor and none of the city doctors will come to them. Alex volunteers to help, saying he's not officially a doctor, but did spend a few years in medical school. For some reason, Sarah never bothers to ask the obvious question, why did you spend time in med school only to become a photojournalist?
But even though he's not officially a doctor, I shall henceforth refer to him as Dr. Creepy. Again, because it amuses me.
We then head to San Diego, where we meet an EMT named Susan, played by Amy Dolenz, who is currently drawing a picture of a cross in front of a pyramid for some unexplainable reason. A moment later, we see her on the job at the site of a drive-by shooting, where the victim is clasping his hands over his chest and praying, which unfortunately prevents the EMTs from getting to his bullet wounds.
Mr. Martinez, listen to me. You have to move your hands. Move your hands. Move your hands.
Whoa, play that again.
You have to move your hands. Move your hands. Move your hands.
Well, I see the asylum has still not figured out how to do ADR properly.
Sadly, Mr. Martinez dies, but strangely enough, he has a tattoo on his arm that matches the picture Sarah was drawing earlier. Damn it, I said stop it! Back in Mexico, our idiot archaeologists have carbon dated the crucifix they found and estimate it came from between 300 and 600 AD. Yeah, no, the crucifix was not used as a symbol of Christianity in the year 300 AD. 600 maybe, but even then they were still pretty rare. They weren't very widespread until the Middle Ages.
The Mayans used crucifixion?
No, there's no scientific evidence to suggest that. This proves that the European Christians were here long before Columbus.
Except there's no scientific evidence to suggest that. Transatlantic travel wasn't possible back then. Say what you will about the scientists in Prometheus, but even they weren't this stupid.
And speaking of stupid scientists, Lloyd is recommending the president evacuate the entire west coast of the US since it'll be flooded when the Earth stops rotating. I don't claim to be an expert, but if the Earth stops spinning suddenly enough for the ocean's momentum to carry it right over the west coast and flood California, Oregon, and Washington, I would think that momentum would also carry everything that's not nailed down. Like people. That sounds like a much bigger problem. In fact, that momentum should indirectly evacuate the west coast for you. There you go, problem solved. At this time, we find out Sarah is actually Lloyd's daughter, as he gives her a call and tells her to take the next flight out of Mexico and head for her grandparents' place in Oklahoma, where she'll be safe. But his dumbass doesn't bother to tell her why she needs to leave, so naturally she brushes it off. And I'm not sure why he's worried anyway, since Veracruz is on Mexico's east coast. And even if it wasn't, there's still the problem with them not being nailed down. But like I said, this guy is a few casseroles short of a potluck. Back in San Diego, my god, we are changing locations faster than the Star Wars prequels. Susan and the other EMT are, for some reason, having a religious debate. Do they do this every time they lose a patient? Because I imagine that would get old pretty quick.
It was his time.
When people have an illness or disease, we don't just say, well, it's their time and leave them to die. We use our technology, our modern medicine to cure them, to save them.
That's the first intelligent thing I've heard anyone say in this entire movie. I have a sneaky suspicion it will also be the last.
Heading back to Mexico, Dr. Frank deduces the crucifix they found must be reunited with the temple at Chichen Itza before the end of the current cycle on the Mayan calendar. How does he know this? Because of the prophecy. What prophecy? The prophecy this movie suddenly pulls out of its anamorphic ass and never bothers to actually explain. Suddenly, an earthquake kicks up, and they hightail it out of there as the ground starts to split underneath them. Apparently, the same thing is happening in San Diego, as well as various other parts of the world that we never see.
Meanwhile, back in the jungle,
Sarah and Dr. Creepy arrive at the village, but find the place deserted. I guess their illness was a symptom of you're about to get raptured disease. It makes about as much sense as anything else in this movie.
Michelle, hello? Hello?
You're in Mexico. Why are you calling out in English? Lloyd calls his daughter again, and this time he explains why she needs to get out of there. What a novel idea. But she's still hesitant to leave as she thinks it may be God's plan for her to be there.
You know, if God's plan is for you to remain in an area that's about to be torn apart by natural disasters, I don't think he likes you very much. Just saying.
Dr. Creepy also points out the absurdity of this line of thinking and briefly convinces her to leave. But on their way out, they run into one of the villagers.
Gino, how did you know I was here?
Te necesito ahora.
Okay.
Again, why are you speaking English? You're in Mexico! And I know you speak the language because I heard you conversing in Spanish in an earlier scene.
Hola, ¿dónde está el doctor?
El doctor está más adelante, una cuadra a la izquierda.
Gracias.
It's only been a few hours. Did you forget how to speak Spanish already, idiota?
By the way, if you're wondering why I'm not including subtitles in these scenes, the Asylum apparently decided it wasn't worth the expense to put a subtitle track on the DVD, and my Spanish is a little rusty. Anyway, Gino says Wakana, a woman in his village, is sick. Sarah agrees to help, and for some reason, Dr. Creepy is now on board as well. But Gino says he can't go with them to the village because... plot.